Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be doing a book review. Today we're going to be reviewing Lakesedge, a gothic fantasy romance written by Linda Clipstone. This book was originally published in fall of 2021, and its sequel book is going to be released later this month. So in honor of the sequel coming out, I'm going to talk about the book in full detail. I'm going to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, and I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So grab your favorite snack or favorite beverage because we are going to dive into the world of Lakesedge. So Lakesedge is considered to be a young adult gothic fantasy. So you're going to be dealing with characters that are in their late teens, around the ages of 17 to 19 years old. That's going to be your age demographic, so to speak, so older teen. The book is approximately 371 pages if you're excluding, the title page, the acknowledgement pages, that sort of thing. It's a fairly fast read if you tend to read very quickly. I personally read this book in about 3 days, and I found it to be fairly enjoyable overall. An interesting attribute about this book is that the chapter headers all have original artwork done by the author, which is really cool. You don't really see a lot of author artwork in any kind of book, so that was a very nice detail. But with that out of the way, let's get into the synopsis of the book. The synopsis goes as follows. Violetta Graceling would do anything to protect her younger brother Arian. Plagued by nightmares, he possesses forbidden black magic that spills from his fingers as shadows. When the notorious Rowan Sylvan, known as the Monster of Lakesedge, discovers Arian's magic, Letta fears the worst. She's shocked when Rowan instead presents a risky offer: refuge at his Lakesedge estate in exchange for Arian's powers. Soon after, Letta and Arian arrive at the once opulent mansion. She discovers that they are not alone. The estate is also visited by the Lord Under, a sinister deity who lurks in the ink-black waters of the lake. Rowan is bound to Lord Under and is desperate to break the curse that binds him to the lake, slowly corrupting him from the inside. As Letta and Arian work furiously to unravel the curse, Letta finds herself falling for the seductive and surprisingly tender Rowan, who proves to be more boy than monster for now. Yet, as Letta begins to push the limits of magic, she can't help but feel the alluring call of the lake. That sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? Makes you want to reread the book again. But that is your overall synopsis of the book. Very gothic, very fantasy, very romance, like I mentioned earlier. But now let's get into the things that I greatly enjoyed about this book. There are several things I greatly enjoyed about the book, but the strongest aspect of it is the beautiful prose that the author has. I would say that that is their most strongest attribute. The way they describe things is very lush and dark, and sometimes it feels like you're not even reading a YA book because the descriptions are so vivid. You really feel like you're in the environment that you're in. You're in Lakesedge, you're at the lake, you're in different parts of the story. That is very clearly defined and amazing if you love atmospheric type of stories. It really helps set the mood without even having to play any music in the background, which is excellent storytelling. Other things that I enjoyed is the relationship that Rowan and Violetta have together. It's like a very believable kind of friendship to romance sort of situation. The dialogue between them is extremely natural. You don't feel like these aren't real people or real characters that are having a conversation. The dialogue as a whole throughout this book is very strong. It doesn't feel awkward. It doesn't feel like it's paced weird. It feels like what these characters are saying is what they would actually say if they were real people. The last thing I would say I greatly enjoyed was the villain. As we mentioned in the synopsis, the villain here is Lord Under, which is ironically the Lord of the Underworld. And he is just, if you're the type of person who falls for villains, I'm sorry, you're probably gonna fall very, very hard for Lord Under, and I'm sorry. But it's just, he's very sinister and menacing, but in like a very appealing sort of way. Like, you don't know a lot about him besides like the energy that he presents in the story. He does present himself like, you know, physically in the story a few times, and when he does, it is like such a moment. If you do fall for villains, I think that'll be the moment that you fall in love with him, because that's the moment I fell in love with him. If he appeared to me and said, let me take you to the underworld, I would be like, yes, take me now, I will do it. Lord Under's character is fascinating. I love having villains in stories where you just can't help but like fall for them even though they're the villain. So in a way, I'm like secretly rooting for him. Just a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, maybe a lot, but he's very, very fun. I really enjoyed his characterization. I love whenever he would pop up. He definitely reminds me of, what is that guy's name from The Labyrinth? I feel like I'm gonna lose my goth card or my my spooky card since I can't remember his name, but you know what I mean. But he reminds me of that. Just very stoic, very like mysterious, and just overall sinister man. But those are the things I really enjoyed about the book. With that out of the way, I want to touch on the romantic aspect of the book before I like dive into the stuff I didn't like. What I do want to preface about the book is that the romance basically holds the whole story together. The romance is the book. So if you really don't like romance as like the forefront to your fantasy, just skip the book, because it's basically the entire story. Rowan and Violetta's relationship is essentially slow burn by YA standards. They fall in love around the course of like 3 months within the story, which is pretty on brand if you're like a teenager. Emotions feel all kinds of weird during that time period. So I would say it's pretty realistic to that type of feeling. Their love is very intense, very in your face, very kind of Romeo and Juliet-esque at times, because their romance picks up like pretty hard, especially towards the latter half of the book. There are declarations of love before the end of the book, so if you like a true slow burn romance where there are no declarations of love and you just kind of see them falling for each other, you're not going to really get that in this book. There are big declarations of love overall, and I just want to preface that. I will say though, their romance is really cute. There are some romantic tropes that you see in most stories in this book. For example, there is a scene in the opening aspect of the book where Rowan and Violetta are riding on a horse together, and you know, the tension between them of them riding on a horse together, which is pretty fucking neat, not gonna lie. But there's stuff like that. You will find some romantic tropes, and that's just one of them. Obviously, I don't want to say all of them because that would spoil the story, but that's kind of how their romance is. Overall, fairly sweet, and I greatly enjoyed that aspect of the book. But now, let's get into the things I didn't enjoy about this book. There aren't that many issues that I had with this book overall. For the most part, I greatly enjoyed it, but there are 2 things that I just couldn't shake that constantly bothered me. And one of them, ironically, is Violetta's characterization for the most part. Specifically in the way she tends to make decisions. She is very brash. She is the kind of character where she feels like she has to do everything on her own by herself, to the point where it's very self-sacrificing, and she likes to martyr herself, would be the best way I can describe her. She likes to kind of just throw herself, and if she dies in the process, then she did what she was supposed to do, which for me is kind of aggravating because I don't tend to really like self-sacrificing characters who tend to throw themselves and martyr themselves in that way. I find it to be kind of unhealthy. But I will say that if you can get past that and make it to the end, or should I say the middle of the book, you'll get an explanation as to why she's like that. And it kind of brings everything together. In that moment, it's just like, oh, I see. That makes sense. Your actions up to this point make complete sense. However, there isn't a lot of growth after that aspect, so she's still like proceeding to do the same thing even after we as readers see why she's like that. So that kind of stays consistent throughout the entire book. She's just consistently a self-sacrificing, martyring character up until the very end of the book. My hope is that in the next book, there is gonna be a change in that characterization, because that does tend to bug me quite a bit. But I find that other aspects of her characterization kind of outweigh that. So if you're the type of person who doesn't like that kind of character, I would skip it. And I did find that other people who have read the book kind of felt the same way about her character. So just as a forewarning. The second thing I didn't greatly enjoy was the vagueness of the magic system. You get pretty decent descriptions of how like the magic works and like where Arian got his powers from, but it's not like clearly explained like how the magic came to be. You get hints of it throughout the book, and I think it's because it's probably going to be further developed in the sequel, but I would have liked maybe more descriptions of like how the magic worked in some aspects. I should say like the history of the magic. I do feel like maybe that'll be answered in the second book, but if you like very detailed descriptions of how a magic system works and you need to know it like within the first book of a duology, yeah, you might not like it, because there's a lot of like loose ends that aren't really thoroughly explained in the first book. I do know we are in the age of content warning, so if any of this is triggering to you, you might want to consider skipping the book entirely. And these were pulled off straight off of the author's website. You can find a lot of information about her books there. In the book, you'll find depictions of emotional and physical abuse by a parent, body horror, gore and blood, including descriptions of wounds, very detailed descriptions of wounds. Emesis, discussions of death and grief, although there are no on-page deaths. There are descriptions of drowning in deep water. I will say that if you're afraid of water, yeah, do not even touch the book. Water is a very big aspect since you're dealing with a manor literally right next to a lake, so no. Moving on, there is drowning related imagery, so if you're afraid of drowning, just avoid it. Followed by self-injury in the context of a curse that requires regular physical sacrifices. I will say that when you do see this, sometimes it's very descriptive and sometimes it's very like nonchalantly done. And then the big one would be suicidal ideation, which is mentioned pretty frequently in the book. So if you are not in the best state mentally, I would say that's the biggest one that you might want to be aware of before reading this book. Overall, I rate Lakesedge a 4 out of 5 bats. I really enjoyed the story overall. I found the romance to be very sweet, very cute. I love the atmospheric settings. I love the gothic atmosphere. It was fantastic, and I found that those aspects of the book hugely outweighed the negatives for me. So I can't wait to read Forest Fall, the sequel that'll be dropping later this month. I can't wait to get my little grubby hands on it. But that is pretty much the review, you guys. I hope you found it enjoyable. If you guys want to see more bookish content in the future, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I hope you will enjoy seeing my beautiful face in the future. And also don't forget to like the video. It lets me know that you guys want to see more book reviews and I can make more for you. If you guys want to see more Lakesedge content, click on this video right here. In that video, I create a makeup look inspired by this gorgeous cover. But with that out of the way, I hope you guys have a wonderful day or night wherever you guys are, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys!